everybody who wants to call us out, who wants to try to say that people are controlling us. This is a student movement. I have talked with my friends at Never Again. We are all students there. Cameron Caskey's, he's the one really leading us. David Hogg, Emma Gonzalez, none of us are talking with these adults. We're just going on these things. We're just talking out. We are making a change, and it is the students. We're not acting. This is real.
Welcome back to AM Joy. Well, there's no question about it. The shooting massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School 11 days ago happened to students. The movement that emerged in its aftermath is being led by students, and they're taking on the fight for gun reform because adults and elected officials have failed to make it safe for America's students to go to school. Yet, some members of the pro-Trump media are questioning their motives, filling the internet with baseless conspiracy theories, describing the shooting as a, quote, false flag, and calling the students, quote, crisis actors. These lies gained steam with the help of fringe far-right sites like Gateway Pundit, True Pundit, and Alex Jones's InfoWars, focusing much of the attention on Parkland survivor David Hogg and his purported connection to the deep state because he's mentioned that his father is a retired FBI agent. David was on our show yesterday, and here's what he had to say to those critics.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to each and every one of you that is out there attacking us as witnesses and even some of the victims of this incident. It's truly saddening to see how many of you have lost faith in America, because we certainly haven't, and we're never going to. We might as well stop now because we're going to outlive you.
Joining me now is Gabriel Sherman of Vanity Fair, Jennifer Rubin of The Washington Post, Jason Kobler of Motherboard, and Kurt Bardella, former Breitbart media consultant. Thank you all. Let's start with the conspiracy theories. And I'll start with you on this, Gabe. You had on February 14th, which is Valentine's Day, less than an hour after that shooting, Twitter accounts were already out there calling eyewitnesses crisis actors. Then Gateway Pundit 5 days later and True Pundit published articles that are then shared on Twitter and liked by Don Jr., also pushing that conspiracy theory. One day later, on February 20th, the Reddit channel attacks David Hogg and his classmates. Day after that, YouTube removes an InfoWars video that is entitled "David Hogg Can't Remember His Lines" in TV interview that received 4 million views. And on Wednesday and Thursday of last week, the #1 trending video on YouTube was suggesting that the same student, David Hogg, is a quote crisis actor. So there's obviously an infrastructure here that's pushing it. That's partly people that Donald Trump and his son retweet and listen to.
Yeah, I mean, where to even begin? I mean, the idea that these students have been survivors of a massacre, they've seen their classmates gunned down in cold blood, and to have their motivations and their integrity questioned by these, far-right actors, I mean, it's just despicable. Now, to the point about sort of the connections to Trump world, don't forget, Donald Trump has given interviews to InfoWars.
Right.
I mean, these are not, yes, they are fringe people, but they have gained legitimacy in this new world because the President of the United States does not marginalize them the way he should.
Yeah, and let me go to you on this, Jason, and welcome to the show. You had on yesterday, Donald Trump retweeting a guy called Wayne Dupree, and it was a 2014, an old video that talked about, this is what it's okay to be black, conservative, and love America, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the reason that that's sort of significant is that Wayne Dupree is another of these conspiracy theorists who, back when the Sandy Hook massacre took place, attacked them as crisis actors, and you now have Facebook and Google really struggling to try to, get rid of those fake news videos. How difficult is it for social media to keep up with just the pace and the intensity and the amplification of this kind of content?
Well, we've seen that YouTube, Google, and Facebook have all had a big fake news problem. I mean, if you search for David Hogg earlier this week, you'd have a couple legitimate videos, and then you'd have 10 or 15 or 20 on the front page that were calling him a crisis actor. So this is a huge problem. I just saw data that there were over 1,000 videos on YouTube that calling these students crisis actors. So yeah, it's a huge problem. It's become not mainstream, but popular, especially on these social platforms.
And Kurt Bardella, you used to advise Breitbart, because what then happens is that once it's in the bloodstream, that Breitbartian audience, Trump's fan base, are the targets. And is there anything that filters them from that kind of information, or is there eager consumers of it?
No, that's what the scary thing is. The idea that there's any kind of editorial quality control in places like Breitbart or InfoWars or Gateway Pundit is just non-existent. There isn't. They look for this stuff actively to put this up there. And in their minds, they think they're playing a little game, that they're trolling the liberal left and the elite media and the establishment politicians, when in actuality, we live in a world where what they put up goes viral so quickly and goes across all of their social media networks and immediately becomes what really is fake news. And instead you have an entire group of people who become misinformed, who are sharing ridiculous conspiracy theories. And the reality of today's technological world is there's nothing in place or no safeguards in place to stop that spreading like a virus that infects everything in debate. And what ends up happening is you have innocent kids who are coping with an unthinkable, unimaginable crisis becoming attacked. That's where our political discourse has fallen in this country.
Yeah, and Jennifer, you write an opinion column for the Washington Post, and that's the challenge, right? That normal media is now up against this just barrage of fake news, sometimes amplified by Russian bots and by non-human actors, and there really isn't an infrastructure on the other side, right?
Yeah, I mean, this does remind me, first of all, of Release the Memo. We saw the same progression from the bots and the social media over to the Breitbarts, over to Fox News, and all the way up the food chain. And it happens again. This is how frankly, the presidential campaign operated as well. And I think it is a struggle every day to try to keep listeners, audiences grounded in reality. And when you have a president who is really dedicated to removing objective truth because he wants to manipulate the public, it becomes increasingly difficult. I would add one thing, and that is the sheer irresponsibility of these media outlets. They really are media outlets, of the Googles and of Facebook and the rest. They know this is going on. We've just gone through the 2016 election. Why is anything with crisis actor up at any of these social media sites? You can't tell me that they don't have an algorithm to block all this stuff. It's absurd. So what have they really learned? What kind of social responsibility are they exercising? And frankly, I'm not one to be censoring the press, but I think shareholders, I think Congress, I think outside pressure has to be applied to these companies so that they are not facilitating this food chain. It's simply inexcusable. Well,
Jason, can you answer that? I mean, what is being done? I mean, these are not. It's not a First Amendment issue. There's no. You don't have a First Amendment right to have your content on YouTube. What are YouTube, Facebook, Google, et cetera, doing about this?
I mean, they're taking a look at this stuff after it actually happens. There's almost no like preemptive or proactive taking down of this stuff. You saw that video go shoot to #1 on trending. It was up there for hours and hours. It had been seen by hundreds of thousands of people, and it's only taken down after there's huge outrage and press response from that.
And being liked by the president's son or retweeted by him. There's also, even if people who are taking in conservative media don't necessarily believe the most fringe conspiracy theories about these Parkland kids, they are being messaged against, even on Fox News. This is a guy called Dan Bongino, who's on the Tucker Carlson show on Tuesday, and this is him talking about the Parkland students with Tucker.
If you are involved in a horrific, unimaginable tragedy like this, your voice should be heard. But the media is focused more on a teenager's expertise in supply-side control measures for guns, which, Tucker, let's be candid, they probably have not studied a very complicated, layered issue.
They're using these kids in a kind of moral blackmail where you're not allowed to disagree or you're attacking the child.
So they're sort of giving themselves an out to disbelieve and attack the kids.
Yeah, I mean, clearly then now they shift the blame to the media. That's the other favorite target of their viewers, is that this is not the children who have gone through this horrible tragedies issue. This is the media giving them a voice, as if they are not a legitimate part of this debate. These are the kids who are on the front lines actually experiencing these horrific events. They are voices right now that Americans should be listening to.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kurt, on top of that, you then have in this further demonization of the media, probably the most invidious soundbite of the week, once again by Dana Loesch, who's provided a lot of them. This was Dana Loesch at CPAC on Thursday saying the media likes and loves mass shootings for a very specific reason.
Many in legacy media love mass shootings. You guys love it. Now, I'm not saying that you love the tragedy, but I am saying that you love the ratings. Crying white mothers are ratings gold to you and many in the legacy media in the back.
Kurt Bardella, crying white mothers.
I mean, this is a different dimension of idiocy that we're seeing right now on display from people like Dana, Yeah, I mean, there are no words to describe. Like, this is someone who clearly, frankly, just has no soul, who's just a paid mercenary, who's happy to keep cashing the check from the NRA to go out there and just spread complete ridiculousness. And to make the insinuation that anybody, any human being on this planet, in any way enjoys covering these type of terrible events, I think the real controversy here is that these events keep happening, and that the answer that they've come up with is, well, we actually need more guns out there in the world. We need more guns in schools, and that will somehow make all of this go away. The fact that kids are becoming under fire and under attack from the crazy right, their own propaganda machine. I mean, really, what disturbs me the most is I know that when Dana left that conference, she went back to her social circle and she got high fives from everybody.
Yeah.
They're giving her you did a great job, way to go out there, way to go after the media. Donald Trump probably loved it. He's probably thinking, I should hire that girl at some point. That's the biggest toxicity right now that's going on in that part of the Republican Party, is they're just talking to one another and fueling this.
But, you know, and not just to one another, though, Jennifer, but I mean, it wouldn't to me have been out of place for Marianne Le Pen to make that same statement, or for UKIP to make it. You know, the specific crying white mothers bit really is using that sort of sub rosa racial appeal, that same kind of quote unquote alt-right messaging for an issue that's completely unrelated, which is their defense of guns at all costs. I mean, am I overreading that?
No, I think you have all of these surface issues, which are important issues, but they basically all migrate back to a few basic themes. One is this paranoia of the liberal establishment. Another is white grievance mentalities, as if whites are the biggest victims in our society. And the third is that at all costs you believe and you defend President Trump. And whatever the issue is, eventually you get back to one of those positions. I do think it's remarkable, put it this way, that the NRA and that this right-wing infrastructure is so panicked. And I think that is what we are seeing. It is panic. These kids have burst through the media buzz. They've burst through the cacophony of different voices. They are reaching Americans. The polls are shifting dramatically. They are forcing companies to abandon their marketing relationships with the NRA. The NRA and their team of enablers must be scared out of their wits, and they should be, because these kids are much more effective communicators than they are. They're much more effective communicators than established gun control groups. They're much more effective communicators, God knows, than professional politicians. So that's, I think, why you see this intense, really disgusting campaign against them. They are scared out of their wits.
And do you sense that kind of fear among the establishment?
I mean, clearly, I want to just, point out, I watched all of Wayne LaPierre's speech at CPAC, and at the end of his speech, he said he wanted to make clear that he is not advocating armed resistance to the federal government. The fact that he even needs to make that qualification shows how dangerous and toxic the NRA's message is, that it could even be construed as that their members should take up armed resistance to any efforts to curtail unlimited gun ownership. And that, to me, again, to the point, I think they show the panic and paranoia that has spread amongst this movement, that they are on the wrong side of history and they are fighting this rearguard action to prevent any limits on this kind of absolutist, firearms ownership.
And what was the reaction when he said that he's not advocating armed resistance? Did he get booed?
No, it was, the CPAC crowd was, really just subdued. It was like, there was this alternate universe, as if, okay, well, that seems logical, that we might have to take up arms against the government.
And Kurt, is that the sort of fever swamp that is still existing at Breitbart, where you used to be?
Oh, absolutely. Again, the idea that at some point, and you hear this every time the gun control debate comes up, that they jump to the extreme talking point if they're going to come to your door and take all of your guns, which nobody of any credibility in any public policy position has said that is going to happen. It is a complete fallacy. It is a lie. But they jump to that extreme, complete reactionary type of reaction. And it fuels the idea that they're going to actually have to, at some point, take up arms and defend themselves against a government coming to your door to take your guns. Yeah. And so when he says at CPAC, you're not going to have to do that, what they hear is, oh, we don't have to do that yet. But it might have to happen.
Yeah. But there's a dwindling audience that believes in the black helicopters, and I think that is the reason that they're freaking out. Gabe and Jennifer sticking around. Thank you very much to Jason Kobler and Kurt Bardella. Appreciate you guys. And coming up, NRA TV might be on the ropes. That's next.